Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates. And today we're going to have a look at the GFS, the GM, the ECMWF and the GFS ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We've got some very interesting model outputs coming out in the last day, and I'm going to go across the midday runs right now as the models start to contend with the southern stratospheric warming. There is some model outputs starting to reflect the potential for some more northern blocking, setting up towards the middle to end of the month, with colder conditions potentially coming back to the UK in about 10 days plus time. So we'll run for the GFS first and show you that. So currently we've got quite cold air over the top of the UK with quite a slack flow, and there is an area of snow moving through Scotland. Maybe some significant snowfall over the mountains, but where any significant snow will fall, it's nothing where it's too unusual. There's a yellow warning out for snow right now over Scotland. The snow band will move further south over the course of tonight into Thursday and Friday, maybe bringing a few flurries and maybe a slight covering to some areas further south, before it peters out as it heads southwards. It may still just be intact enough to give some snowfall for the Midlands and southern England, potentially. But again, it'll probably be quite localised, and there's no warnings in force, and it's very difficult to pick it out on any model, so we won't have a look at that. But regardless of any potential snowfall, there's going to be a lot of snow showers into the northeast. Again, nothing too unusual, but it's going to be very bitterly cold though. Overnight lows maybe -4, -5 quite widely, and maybe getting down to minus double digits in more sheltered spots, a widespread frost, and in the day only getting up to 1, 2, maybe 3 degrees before starting to turn a bit milder as we head towards Saturday, with milder air coming in from the west. As you can see, the high pressure flattening off. It will still remain fairly cool, as it's not, if you ever look at the upper air, it's not very mild temperatures coming off the Atlantic, but it's more of an Atlantic flow, so it's generally going to return temperatures to around average, and we'll have a look at the ensembles in a minute, and you'll see that that's reflected quite well. Beyond that, we'll try to push low pressure into the Atlantic, but high pressure remains strong over the top of the UK, and remains fairly cool, potentially frosty in the southeast, but again, probably around average at daytime, and then it may be a bit milder and a bit wetter in the north, where we've got more of a southwesterly to westerly flow. Low pressure tries to push in, but never really gets low pressure through the country, sort of rides over through Scotland, so Scotland could still see some rain and some more mild conditions. But in the big picture, though, we start to see this big lobe of the tropospheric polar vortex, which has been sitting over Siberia and the other side of the Arctic for most of the winter so far. It's being pushed towards Scandinavia. Now, this is something that we would be reflected by the southern stratospheric warming as it pushes areas of cold air out from the Arctic. If you have a look at the upper airs, deep cold pushing into Eastern Europe and Scandinavia, while we sit under a ridge of high pressure with around average temperatures. You can see the high pressure is starting to try and ridge north. And if we have a look at the northern hemisphere view, you can see there's already pockets of high pressure over the North Pole. We've got to try to see now is some of the high pressure off the Atlantic connecting with this area of high pressure, potentially bringing in northerly winds. And you can see the high pressure is quite strong. We start to keep trying to reinforce that high pressure in from the Atlantic, trying to head towards Greenland and Scandinavia, but not really getting there. But if we have a look towards the end of the run, we see it starts getting reinforced even more, and by the end of the run, high pressure is starting to edge towards Scandinavia, and by day 10, there's a potential that we're starting to pull in some colder air from the east, and you can see the colder air is just to our east, but then it looks like potentially the Atlantic's powering up. So bits of a divisive sort of pattern there. It's trying to build high pressure to our north with the cold air to our east, potentially bringing us colder conditions. But again, the Atlantic's starting to power up, so it's going to be a bit of a background situation. It's just going to be really interesting how it evolves over the next week. I'm pretty sure in the next week we'll have some idea of some of the potential impacts from this southern stratospheric warming. We'll move on to the GEM model. So the GEM model has a very similar pattern for the next a few days at least, high pressure is flattened across the country. It does look like low pressure or deeper area or more localized area of low pressure pushes across the north of the country on Tuesday. So that might bring more widespread rainfall, and it would make it probably a bit wetter further south. Before high pressure builds back in, very strong area of high pressure just to our south, and then it tries to build to our north by day 10. And if we have a look at the northern hemisphere view, pockets of high pressure over the Arctic, probably as a result of sudden stratospheric warming. We've got the tropospheric polar vortex breaking into different parts. One part heading towards Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, which is good for bringing a cold pool for ready to tap into. Other bits going towards Siberia, more towards Canada. You can see upper airs deep cold over Scandinavia. And we are just starting to try and tap into that air if we can get that high pressure just a bit further north. So all the models so far not pulling anything deeply cold in, but just starting to show hints that there's potential from day 10 onwards that we start to show up a colder pattern. Pretty sure looking at this, we probably would start to put in colder air, but we've just got to get the high pressure further north to get a block in for sustained cold conditions. If we lastly have a look at the ECMWF, which will be again very similar for the next few days. A bit more of a low pressure influence, especially further north there. But as we head towards day 10, again, we've got a bit of blocking to our north. If we look at the northern hemisphere view, more blocking towards Russia and Svalbard, and then a deep area of low pressure just to our east with quite cold air within it. And there's still low pressure out in the Atlantic, but it's not deep low pressure, so it's not going to take too much to disturb that and build blocking up to our north. So there's potential there. If we run on a couple of days, we'd start to see these areas of high pressure connect together and strengthen and start pulling in easterly winds. But again, I'm just saying there's potential there. It could go the other way. When these high pressures just break down, we do pull it more into an Atlantic flow. But again, it's really difficult to pinpoint it right now, as the models are just toying with what potential impacts we could see. But all models are really showing that we're going to remain fairly settled in the south, maybe a bit more unsettled north, with around average conditions, with deep cold heading towards Scandinavia and Eastern Europe. We just need to pull in the synoptics to pull some of that colder air towards the UK. So that's something we have to look at in the next week. Lastly, if we have a look at the GFS and the GFS upper airs and precipitation for London, this is ensembles, you can see generally we're quite cold over the next couple of days. That's where we're going to see quite cold conditions. Maybe a bit of snowfall. That's why I was talking about potential for that feature still to be, or that weather front to still be intact. Beyond that, it returns to around average. Precipitation spikes are there, but they're not too significant, so it's remaining fairly unsettled, but it's nothing going to bring any big stormy conditions. Beyond that, you can start to see there's quite a few ensemble members going quite cold. A lot of ensemble members are starting to go between -5 and -10, with a couple going below -10, and that is quite cold conditions. Sort of similar to cold conditions we have now, perhaps even colder if it's more of a flow from the east, with a colder air source as well. Likely, if we did start to see some of these ensembles come off, it would trend even colder in the long term. But again, there's still a lot of scatter. Very unsure with what we're going to be seeing with that. So it's just really, we've got to stay tuned. They are trending colder in the long run, but it's still very easy to flip at the moment. If you look at the dew points, you can see some going very low, which is symbolic of deep, cold air source. And then if we have a look at the 2 meter temperatures, you can see very cold in the next couple of days, not getting really above 2 or 3 degrees. The lows are not particularly accurate on here, probably going a lot colder than this. In fact, these are just looking at more of the air temperatures, so it will actually be going a little bit colder than that, actually, as they don't really pick up on the sort of microclimates, etc. Beyond that, generally around average, 5, 6, 7 degrees in the day, around 2, 3, 4 degrees at night. But again, if we do go colder towards the end of the month, this will be setting up quite a cold January, as the CET for the first week of January is very cold at the moment. So it's going to be very interesting to see what's going to happen and what's going to evolve over the next week. But it's definitely we're going to have at least a week in the middle of January of more milder potentially unsettled in the north, maybe more settled in the south conditions. Beyond that, there's potential that we could go a lot colder, or we could just stay in the same sort of westerly pattern. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe to stay tuned, and I'll see you again for another video soon.